Admiral Han Wu stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Earth. The room looked like any other military headquarters, with screens showing ship positions and communication arrays. But the screens now showed something different than they had for 200 years. Hidden across human space were facilities that most people had forgotten about. They looked like mining stations, research centers, and farming colonies. But they were much more than that. For 2 centuries, humans had been quietly preparing for the day when peace would not be enough. "Send the activation codes," Han Wu said quietly to his communication officer. Lieutenant Kang Minji began transmitting messages across human space. The codes had not been used for 200 years. Most humans had never heard of them. But in secret bases on 100 worlds, people received orders they had hoped would never come. Captain Oh Jinsu was checking cargo manifests on what everyone thought was a slow freight ship called the Peaceful Trader. The ship carried farming equipment and medical supplies between human colonies. At least that was what the official record said. When his personal communicator buzzed with the activation code, Oh Jinsu smiled for the first time in months. He had been pretending to be a merchant captain for 15 years. He was tired of pretending. "Remove the cargo disguises," he ordered his crew. The containers that held farming equipment fell away from the ship's hull. Weapon systems that had been hidden for decades emerged from their concealed compartments. The Peaceful Trader transformed into the Inchin's Wrath, a destroyer built to hunt and kill enemy ships with perfect efficiency. All across human space, the same transformation was happening. Cargo ships revealed themselves as warships. Mining stations opened to show missile batteries. Research facilities activated defense systems that could destroy entire fleets. The galaxy had thought humans were peaceful merchants and builders. They were about to learn the truth. General Seo Jiwan commanded the human colonial defense from what everyone believed was a farming colony on New Jeju. The colonists really did grow food and raise animals, but they also maintained weapons and practiced combat exercises when no one was watching. "How long since our last combat drill?" she asked her aide, Major Beck Sora. 3 months ago, General. All units report ready for immediate deployment." The farmers of New Jeju put down their tools and picked up weapons they had been maintaining in secret barns. The peaceful colony became a military base in less than an hour. Commander Nam Hyun had spent 20 years pretending to be a cargo ship captain. His vessel, the Soul Merchant, looked like a simple freight hauler. It was actually the flagship Soul Vengeance, equipped with weapons that could destroy planets. "Set course for Vorthon space," he ordered his crew. "Maximum stealth. Let's go introduce ourselves." The Vorthons had no idea what was coming their way. They continued their attacks on human settlements, confident that they were fighting a weak species that only knew how to build and trade. Admiral Vexmore was meeting with his fleet commanders in an asteroid field where they thought they were safe from human ships. The asteroid field was in neutral space, far from any trade routes. It was the perfect place to plan their next attacks on human colonies. "These humans have no courage to fight," Vexmore told his officers. His 6 arms gestured dismissively. "They file complaints and ask for mediation. Soon we will own all of their trade routes and colonies." The other Vorthon commanders laughed. They had destroyed human ships and killed human families without any real response. The humans seemed incapable of defending themselves. "What should we attack next?" asked Commander Zeklor. "The mining colony on Kepler 9, Vexmore replied. "It has good defensive positions, but the humans will surrender as soon as we show force. Then we can use it as a base for further expansion." That was when 30 human ships appeared out of nowhere. The Vorthons had never seen stealth technology like this. The human ships had been sitting right next to them, invisible and silent, listening to every word of their planning session. Captain Oh Jinsu was the first to fire. His weapons cut through the Vorthon flagship like it was made of tissue paper. The massive alien vessel, which had destroyed dozens of human cargo ships, broke apart in seconds. The other human ships opened fire at the same time. Each shot was perfectly aimed. Each target was carefully chosen. The humans did not waste energy on random destruction. They eliminated threats with surgical precision. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, the entire Vorthon battle fleet was nothing but floating debris. Only one small scout ship survived, and Captain Oh Jinsu had let it escape on purpose. He wanted someone to carry the news of what had happened. On Coalition Station Alpha, Dr. Park Minho watched the news reports with interest. Aliens who had laughed at humans for being weak suddenly went very quiet. The reports coming in from the asteroid field made no sense to them. "How is this possible?" asked the Centauri ambassador, his blue skin pale with shock. "Humans don't have military ships. They don't have weapons like this." Park Min-ho smiled. "You never asked what humans did before we joined the coalition." "But they're merchants and builders," the ambassador insisted. "They've been peaceful for 2 centuries. Peaceful by choice," Park Min-ho corrected. "There's a difference." Major Bayek Sora led the first boarding action against a captured Vorthon command ship. The Vorthons expected to fight clumsy humans who would stumble around their corridors, confused by alien technology. Instead, they met something they had never encountered before. Humans had evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill them. They learned to hunt in packs, to think several steps ahead of their prey, to turn any object into a weapon. For 200 years, they had been pretending to be something gentler. Bexora and her team moved through the Vorthon ship like shadows of death. They knew exactly where to go because humans had helped design similar ships decades ago. They knew exactly what to do because they had been training for this moment their entire lives. The Vorthons, who had seemed so dangerous when attacking helpless merchant vessels, fell before the human soldiers like children playing war games with adults. In 30 minutes, the entire Vorthon crew was captured. Not killed, captured. The humans wanted prisoners who could tell others what they had witnessed. Engineer Choi Hana had survived the massacre at mining station Busan 7 by hiding in the maintenance tunnels for 3 days. When human rescue ships found her, she was the only survivor out of 847 people. Now she sat in the communications center of a hidden human military base, coordinating intelligence operations across former Vorthon territory. "Broadcasting the memorial list now," she announced. Across every communication channel in the galaxy, the names and faces of the people who died at Busan 7 appeared. Each person was shown with their age, their job, their family. There were pictures of children who would never grow up, parents who would never see their kids again, grandparents who died trying to protect their families. But this was not a plea for sympathy. This was a declaration of war. After each name came the same message: they will be avenged. Back on Earth, Kim Yuna composed a message that would be sent to every government in the galaxy. She wanted to make sure everyone understood what was happening and why. "Day 1 of human military operations is complete," the message said. "The Vorthons attacked our civilians and murdered our families. They believed we were weak because we chose peace. They were wrong. We gave them chances to stop. We filed complaints. We requested mediation. We offered diplomatic solutions. They responded by killing more innocent people. Today they learned the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. This message serves as notification that humanity is no longer bound by diplomatic protocols. We will use whatever force is necessary to protect our people and punish those who harm them. 5 days remain." The message was signed simply, Humanity. General Krextar, who had mocked humans in the Coalition Council, sat in his command bunker reading reports that made no sense. His main battle fleet was gone. His most experienced commanders were dead or captured. Human ships were appearing everywhere with weapons that should not exist. He sent desperate messages to the hegemony species that had supported Vorthon expansion. The hegemony had encouraged Vorthon attacks on humans because they thought humans were easy targets that could be divided up among the stronger species. "Send all available ships immediately," Krextar begged in his transmission. "The humans are not what we thought they were. They have weapons and ships we never knew about. They fight like nothing we have ever seen." But help was days away, and the humans were not waiting. Captain Li Dong had returned to his merchant duties, but now his cargo ships were escorted by vessels that everyone knew were weapons platforms. When a group of opportunistic raiders tried to attack his convoy, thinking humans were still easy targets, they learned otherwise very quickly. The raiders found themselves surrounded by ships that had appeared from empty space. Their weapons were disabled by precise fire that left their life support systems intact. Their crews were captured and delivered to coalition authorities with detailed records of their crimes. "Tell everyone what you saw here," Li Dong told the captured raiders. "Tell them that humans remember both their friends and their enemies." Captain Li Dong watched the stars through the clear window of his cargo ship. The new soul was carrying medicine and food to the human colony on Kepler 7. It was a normal trip, one he had done many times before. Li Dong liked these peaceful runs through space. Humans were known across the galaxy as good traders and builders. They fixed things, built space stations, and never caused trouble. His crew of 12 people worked quietly on the bridge. They checked their instruments and made sure the cargo was safe. The 3 other ships in his small fleet followed behind them. Each ship carried supplies that the colony needed to survive. The alarm started ringing suddenly. Li Dong ran to the bridge where his crew was looking at their screens with worry. 3 large ships had appeared nearby. They were Vorthon ships, dark and covered with spikes like their owners. "Captain, they're demanding we stop," said his communication officer, Yuntek. His voice was nervous. Li Dong knew about the Vorthons. They were tall aliens with hard shells and 6 arms. They liked to fight and thought they were better than everyone else. But this was human space, protected by galactic law. The trade routes here had been used by humans for 50 years. "Tell them we're in human territory," Li Dong said firmly. "We have every right to be here. These are established trade routes." The answer came quickly and violently. The lead Vorthon ship fired a bright red beam at one of Li Dong's cargo ships. The ship, called Busan Merchant, exploded in a ball of fire and metal. 43 humans died in seconds, including families who were moving to the colony. "They're attacking the other ships too," Yuntek shouted, his hands shaking as he worked the controls. Li Dong watched helplessly as 2 more of his ships were destroyed. The Pretty Star and the Soul Dreams became clouds of burning debris. The Vorthons captured the survivors from the life pods and took them prisoner. Then they sent a message that made Li Dong's blood run cold. "Humans travel in Vorthon space now," the alien voice said with cruel pleasure. "You will ask permission next time or you will die like these others." But this was not Vorthon space. These were trade routes humans had used peacefully for 50 years. Everyone in the galaxy knew these paths belonged to human merchants. Li Dong managed to escape in the New Soul, but he could not save his friends. He sent an emergency message to Earth reporting the attack and the murder of over 100 innocent people. On Earth, Admiral Han Wu got the news about the attack while he was eating breakfast. He was a gray-haired man of 52 who remembered the time before humans joined the Galactic Trade Coalition. Back then, other species feared humans. They called Earth a death world, and its people the warrior race. That was 200 years ago, before humans decided to try peace instead of war. Han Wu read the report carefully. More Vorthon attacks on human ships. More demands that humans ask permission to use their own trade routes. The Vorthons were testing how far they could push the peaceful humans. He looked out the window of his office at the busy spaceport below. Human ships came and went, carrying goods and people to colonies across the galaxy. These ships had no weapons. They relied on galactic law and diplomatic protection to keep them safe. Han Wu remembered when human ships had been different. When they carried weapons that could crack planets. When other species moved carefully around human space because they knew what happened to those who attacked humans. Those days seemed like ancient history now. Ambassador Kim Yuna was Earth's voice in the galactic government. She was a smart woman of 38 who believed in solving problems with words, not weapons. When she heard about the attacks, she did what humans always did. She filed a complaint with the Coalition Council. The council met in a huge chamber on Coalition Station Alpha. Representatives from dozens of species sat in floating chairs, discussing trade disputes and border problems. Most of them thought humans were useful but weak. "The Vorthons have attacked peaceful merchants in human space," Kim Yuna told the council. Her voice was calm and professional. "This breaks galactic law. We demand justice for the murdered civilians." The council listened and made their usual promises. They would investigate the attack. They would send mediators to talk with the Vorthons. They would find a peaceful solution that satisfied everyone. Kim Yuna had heard these words many times before. The council was good at making promises. They were not good at keeping them. Dr. Park Min-ho was studying alien cultures on Coalition Station Alpha. He was a scientist who watched how different species behaved and thought. He had been studying humans for years, trying to understand why they were so different from other species. Park Min-ho watched the council meetings and saw how other species looked at humans. They thought humans were soft, weak, good for building things but not for fighting. They saw human patience as a sign that humans could not defend themselves. He knew they were wrong, but he could not tell them why. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. The Vorthons grew bolder after their attack on Li Dong's fleet. They started stopping human ships just to search them. They claimed more and more space as their own. They took human cargo and called it taxes for using Vorthon space. Captain Yoon Taik, who had survived the attack, tried to continue his merchant runs. But now Vorthon ships followed him everywhere. They boarded his ship and took whatever they wanted. They beat his crew for not showing proper respect. 3 human civilians were executed by Vorthon soldiers. The reason given was failing to show proper respect to superior beings. The executions were broadcast across subspace so everyone could see what happened to humans who displeased the Vorthon's. Kim Yuna filed another complaint with the council. The council promised to look into it. They sent a strongly worded letter to the Vorthon government. The Vorthons laughed at the letter and executed 3 more humans. On the mining station Busan 7, engineer Choi Hana was fixing a broken drill when the alarm started. She was 29 years old and had worked on the station for 3 years. She looked out the window and saw Vorthon ships surrounding the station. Busan 7 was a small mining station with 847 people living on it. There were miners, engineers, teachers, doctors, and children. It was a peaceful place where families worked together to extract rare metals from asteroids. "This is Commander Vexmore of the Vorthon Empire," came the message. "This station is now Vorthon property. All humans will be relocated immediately." Choi Hana knew what relocated meant when Vorthon said it. She had heard the stories from other stations that had been relocated. None of the humans from those places were ever seen again. The station manager, an old man named Kim Tae-ho, tried to talk to the Vorthons. "This is human territory," he said over the communication system. "You have no right to be here. Please leave peacefully." The Vorthons did not leave. They boarded the station with soldiers carrying energy weapons. What happened next was not relocation. It was systematic murder. Choi Hana hid in the maintenance tunnels as the Vorthons went through the station. They were not just taking the station. They were killing everyone they found. Men, women, children, it did not matter to them. They shot people who tried to surrender. They shot people who tried to hide. They shot people who begged for mercy. She reached the emergency transmitter and sent out a message to any human ship that could hear her. Her voice was shaking with fear and grief. "This is Busan 7. The Vorthons are here. They're killing everyone. Even the children, please, someone. Make them stop." The transmission reached many ships, but it was too late to help. The Vorthons destroyed the station's main power core, and the transmission stopped forever. Admiral Han Woo received the message on Earth. He listened to the scared voice of the engineer. He heard the sounds of weapons firing in the background. He heard people screaming for help that would never come. Then he heard silence. Han Woo sat in his chair for a long time after the message ended. He was thinking about the 847 people who had just died. He was thinking about the children who would never grow up. He was thinking about the families that had been destroyed for no reason except Vorthon cruelty. All across human space, people heard about Busan 7. The news traveled faster than the fastest ships. 847 innocent people were dead. The Vorthons had broadcast the killing to show their superiority over weak humans. Something changed in the human colonies that day. Something that had been sleeping for 200 years began to wake up. Kim Yuna made one more trip to the Coalition Council. She stood before the representatives of dozens of species and made one final appeal for justice. Her voice was still calm, but there was something different in her eyes. The Vorthon representative, General Krekstar, was there. He was tall and dark, with shell armor and cold eyes that showed no mercy. When Kim Yuna finished speaking, he laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "Your species talks about peace because you are weak," he said to the council. "You build things and grow food and trade because you cannot fight. The strong take what they want from the weak. This is the way of nature." Dr. Park Min-ho was watching from the gallery. He had studied the behavior of predator species across the galaxy. As General Krekstar spoke, Park Min-ho noticed something the aliens in the chamber missed. Day 2 began with complete silence across Vorthon space. Every communication satellite was gone. Every relay station had been destroyed. Every way the Vorthons used to talk to their ships and colonies had been cut. They tried to send messages to their remaining fleets, but nothing worked. The humans had systematically eliminated every piece of communication equipment in Vorthon territory. Captain Oh Jinsu led a squadron of ships that looked like medical vessels. The red crosses painted on their white hulls were real. These ships did carry medical supplies and emergency equipment, but they also carried something else that the Vorthans had never seen before. Deploy the jamming devices. Jinsu ordered his crew. Machines that looked like medical scanners began sending out signals that scrambled every piece of Vorthan electronics within range. Ship computers crashed. Weapon systems stopped working. Life support systems began failing throughout the Vorthan fleet. The medical ships then did exactly what they were designed to do. They rescued the Vorthan survivors, gave them medical treatment, and took them prisoner. "We are not like you," Jinsu told the captured Vorthan officers as human medics treated their injuries. "We do not murder helpless people, even when they are our enemies." General Seo Juan coordinated ground operations against Vorthan military bases. Human soldiers who had spent decades pretending to be farmers and miners revealed their true training. They moved through enemy defenses like ghosts, appearing where they were not expected, striking where the enemy was weakest. The Vorthans had built their bases to defend against conventional attacks. They expected enemies to come straight at them with large numbers of soldiers and heavy weapons. They were not prepared for humans who could appear and disappear like shadows. Major Byaxora led her special forces team against a Vorthan fortress built inside a large asteroid. The fortress was supposed to be impossible to capture. It had multiple layers of defense, escape tunnels, and enough supplies to last for years. Her team captured it in 43 minutes. "How did they know our defensive layout?" asked the captured Vorthan commander. His shell armor cracked and his 6 arms bound. Byaxora removed her helmet and looked at him with calm eyes. "We built this fortress for you 30 years ago," she said simply. "Did you think we forgot where we put the doors and ventilation shafts?" The truth was becoming clear to the surviving Vorthans. For decades, humans had been involved in construction projects across the galaxy. They had built space stations, repaired ships, designed defense systems, and installed communication networks. They had been welcomed everywhere because they were peaceful, helpful, and never asked for anything except fair payment. They had also been learning. Every blueprint they drew, every system they installed, every secret they were trusted with, humans had kept detailed records of all of it. Dr. Park Min-ho sat in his office on Coalition Station Alpha, explaining the situation to terrified alien diplomats who were finally beginning to understand what was happening. "You invited humans to build your worlds and design your defenses," he told a group of species representatives. "We studied how you think, how you fight, how your technology works. Not to attack you someday, but to protect ourselves if someone ever forced us to fight." The Centauri ambassador looked sick. His blue skin had turned pale gray. "You mean humans have been planning this war for centuries?" "No," Park Min-ho replied patiently. "We have been preparing for centuries. There is a very important difference. We hoped we would never need these preparations. We preferred building schools and hospitals to building weapons. But we are not stupid. We knew that someday, someone would mistake our kindness for weakness." On day 3, the hegemony sent their largest war fleet to rescue what remained of the Vorthan Empire. 12 different species had joined together to build an armada of over 300 ships. The combined fleet was larger than anything seen in the galaxy for 1,000 years. They were convinced that humans could not possibly fight against so many different enemies at the same time. Each species had different weapons, different tactics, different ways of thinking about war. No single opponent could prepare for such variety. Commander Nam Hyon met them with a single ship. The Soul Vengeance looked tiny compared to the massive alien armada. Ships the size of small cities surrounded the lone human vessel. The hegemony commanders opened communication channels and laughed at what they saw. One ship mocked Admiral Kexlon of the hegemony fleet. "The humans send one ship against our entire armada? Surrender now, and we will give you a quick death instead of the slow torture your species deserves." Nam Hyun's response was calm and quiet. "You supported the murder of human children. You encouraged the Vorthans to attack our peaceful colonies. You celebrated when innocent families died. There will be no surrender. There will be no mercy. There will be justice." The Soul Vengeance revealed its true nature. Weapons that had been hidden throughout the ship's structure emerged from concealed positions. Energy beams reached out in all directions like the arms of an angry star. The ship moved like a living creature, dodging attacks that should have destroyed it. The battle lasted 26 minutes. When it ended, Over 300 alien warships had been reduced to glowing debris. The Soul Vengeance had not received a single hit. Nam Hyan broadcast his report to Admiral Han Wu on Earth. Day 3 objectives completed successfully. Hegemony reinforcement fleet eliminated. No human casualties to report. Outstanding work, Han Wu replied. Begin Day 4 operations immediately. Lieutenant Kang Minji coordinated the psychological warfare campaign from a facility that everyone thought was a university. Her job was to make sure every species in the galaxy understood exactly what was happening and why it was happening. Broadcasting across all networks now, she announced to her team of communication specialists. The message that appeared on every screen in the galaxy was simple and direct. It showed footage of the destroyed hegemony fleet, the captured Vorthan bases, and the precision with which human forces operated. This is what happens when you murder human families, the message said. This is what happens when you mistake our choice to be peaceful for an inability to fight. This is what happens when you support those who commit genocide against innocent people. The footage showed something that terrified every military commander in the galaxy. The humans were not fighting with the savage brutality that most species used in war. They were fighting like surgeons, removing only the parts that needed to be removed while leaving everything else intact. Vorthan military bases were destroyed, but Vorthan civilian areas were untouched. Hegemony warships were eliminated, but their crew escape pods were rescued and their survivors were given medical care. This was not the random destruction of angry primitives. This was warfare conducted by people who understood exactly what they were doing and why. Captain Li Dong had returned to his regular merchant routes, but now his cargo ships were escorted by vessels that everyone recognized as military platforms. When a group of pirates tried to attack his convoy, they discovered that the reputation of human merchants had changed dramatically. The pirate ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels that appeared out of empty space. Their weapons were disabled by precise fire that left their engines and life support systems working perfectly. Their crews were captured alive and delivered to coalition authorities with complete records of their crimes. Tell everyone what you witnessed here today, Li Dong told the captured pirates as they were transferred to prison ships. Tell them that humans protect their friends and remember their enemies. Engineer Choi Hana had been given a new position in the human war effort. She now served as the coordinator of intelligence operations, using her knowledge of mining and construction to identify weak points in enemy fortifications. The Vorthans think they have hidden their main command center inside that moon, she reported to Admiral Han Wu during their daily briefing. They seem to have forgotten that we helped them install all the mining equipment there 5 years ago. We have complete blueprints of every tunnel and chamber. How long would it take your teams to capture it? Han Wu asked. 6 hours if we go slowly and carefully, Choi Hana replied. 2 hours if we use direct assault methods. Go slowly, Han Wu ordered. We want prisoners and information, not just another pile of rubble. Day 4 ended with the Vorthan Empire completely isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Their military fleets were destroyed or surrendered. Their allies had abandoned them after seeing what happened to the Hegemony Armada. Their communication networks were destroyed, their supply lines were cut, and their defensive positions were being captured one by one. Captain Shin Wook commanded the siege fleet that surrounded the Vorthan homeworld. His flagship was called the Buzan Memorial, named after the mining station where 847 innocent people had been murdered. Every person in his crew knew exactly why they were there. The Vorthan homeworld was protected by the most advanced defensive systems in their empire. Orbital weapons platforms, energy shields, underground bunkers, and automated defense networks formed multiple layers of protection around the planet. The Vorthans believed their homeworld was safe. They had spent centuries building defenses that could stop any known weapon. The 24-hour ultimatum expired at exactly 8 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time on Day 5. The Vorthan response came immediately. General Krekstar's voice was full of anger and pride as he broadcast his message to the human fleet surrounding his homeworld. We do not surrender to inferior species, he declared. Our homeworld is protected by defenses you cannot imagine. Our ancestors conquered half the galaxy. We will not bow to weak creatures who hide behind machines. Come and die on our soil. Captain Shin Wook read the message in his command chair aboard the Busan Memorial. He had hoped the Vorthans would choose surrender. He had hoped they would realize that their pride was not worth the destruction that was about to fall on them, but he was not surprised by their choice. Pride had made them murder innocent families. Pride would now destroy them completely. All units, he broadcast to every ship in the human fleet. Day 5 operations are now beginning. Remember your training. Remember the rules of engagement. Remember the 847 people who died on mining station Busan 7. The Vorthon homeworld was the most heavily defended planet in their empire. For centuries, they had built layer after layer of protection around their world. Massive orbital weapons platforms floated in space around the planet. Energy shields that could stop nuclear weapons covered every city. Underground bunkers deep enough to survive planet-killing explosions protected the government and military leadership. The Vorthons thought they were completely safe. Major Beck Sora led the first assault wave, but her ships did not approach the planet in any way the Vorthon defenders expected. Instead of attacking the orbital defenses directly, the human ships moved to positions that seemed to make no military sense. "Why are they not attacking our weapons platforms?" asked a confused Vorthon officer watching the human fleet from the main defense center. "Because they know they cannot break through our shields," General Krextar replied with confidence. "They are trying to find a weak point, but there is none. Our defenses are perfect." He was about to discover just how wrong he could be. The humans had been studying Vorthon defenses for decades. They knew about every gun, every shield generator, every bunker. More importantly, they knew about the power sources that kept everything running. Bexora's ships fired on targets that seemed completely meaningless to the Vorthon observers. They shot at old satellites, pieces of space debris, and abandoned mining stations. The Vorthons laughed at what appeared to be random, desperate attacks. But these targets were not random at all. Each one was connected to the Vorthon defense network in ways the Vorthons themselves had forgotten about. Power relays hidden inside old satellites, communication lines running through abandoned stations, backup systems disguised as harmless debris. The first orbital weapons platform went dark as its power supply was suddenly cut. Then another platform lost power. Then another. In 30 minutes, half of the Vorthon orbital defenses were offline, and the defenders still had no idea why their systems were failing. "This is impossible," Krextar muttered as he watched his defense screens show system after system going offline. "Our engineers said these power systems were completely secure." What the Vorthon engineers had not mentioned was that human contractors had helped design most of those power systems 40 years earlier. Commander Nam Hyun brought his flagship, the Soul Vengeance, close to the planet's main energy shield. The shield was a masterpiece of defensive technology. It could stop any weapon known to galactic science. Nuclear bombs, antimatter missiles, even planet-cracking beam weapons would bounce harmlessly off its surface. The shield should have been completely impenetrable. Nam Hyun fired a single, precise shot at a point that looked exactly like every other point on the massive energy barrier. To the Vorthons watching, it seemed like a pointless gesture. The entire planetary shield collapsed in seconds. "How is this possible?" screamed a Vorthon technician as alarms began ringing throughout the defense center. "The shield generator is buried 5 kilometers underground. It's protected by solid rock and reinforced metal." The answer was simple, though the technicians would not learn it until much later. Humans had helped design and install the shield generator 4 decades ago. They knew exactly where its weak point was located, and they knew exactly how much force was needed to hit it. Captain Oh Jinsu led the landing forces down to the planet's surface. The Vorthons had spent months preparing for a massive ground invasion. They expected millions of human soldiers to attack their cities with tanks, aircraft, and heavy weapons. They had built trenches, gun positions, and fortified bunkers to stop such an assault. They expected the kind of brutal, destructive warfare that most galactic species used when they fought each other. Instead, they encountered something completely different. Ojinsu's forces moved like precision instruments rather than a conquering army. They did not attack civilian areas or destroy cultural sites. They did not bomb cities or kill non-combatants. Instead, they moved directly to specific military targets with surgical accuracy. Vorthon government buildings were captured by human special forces who appeared and disappeared like ghosts in the night. Military commanders found themselves prisoners before they even knew they were under attack. Communication centers, weapons factories, and command bunkers fell to human soldiers who seemed to know exactly where everything was located. The most shocking thing to the Vorthons was what the humans did not do. They did not destroy anything they did not need to destroy. They did not kill anyone who was not actively fighting them. They treated captured enemies with medical care and proper food. Dr. Park Min-ho watched the invasion from Coalition Station Alpha. He was surrounded by alien diplomats who could not believe what they were seeing on the news broadcasts. "This cannot be real," said the Rigelian ambassador, his tentacles waving in confusion. "No species can fight with this level of precision. There should be massive destruction. Cities should be burning. Millions should be dead." "That is exactly the point," Park Min-ho explained calmly. "Other species fight to destroy their enemies completely. Humans fight to achieve specific goals with minimum necessary force. They do not want to rule the Vorthan homeworld. They want justice for their murdered families." Lieutenant Kang Minji coordinated the information campaign from her hidden communication center. Every human military action was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. The message was clear to anyone watching. This was not conquest for territory or resources. This was justice being delivered with perfect precision. "Show them the prisoner. Treatment facilities," she ordered her camera. Crews, the footage that appeared on screens across the galaxy showed something that amazed every species. Captured Vorthon soldiers were living in clean, comfortable quarters. They received excellent medical care, nutritious food, and fair treatment from their human guards. "Why do you not torture us?" asked a captured Vorthon officer during an interview. "Why do you not execute us for revenge? We killed your families. We destroyed your colonies. We celebrated your deaths." Captain Shin Wook visited the prisoner compound personally to answer that question. He looked at the confused alien with calm, steady eyes. "Because we are not you," he said simply. "We do not murder helpless people even when those people have wronged us. We seek justice according to law, not revenge according to anger." General Seo Ji-won led the final assault on the main Vorthan government complex in their capital city. The building was designed to be the ultimate fortress. It had multiple layers of security, escape tunnels, and enough supplies to last for months of siege warfare. The Vorthan leadership was confident they could hold out until help arrived from somewhere. Somehow. It took Seo Ji-won's forces exactly 47 minutes to reach the main council chamber. Inside the chamber, they found General Krextar and his remaining officers. The Vorthans had barricaded themselves behind overturned tables and chairs. They held energy weapons in their 6 hands and shouted about fighting to the death rather than surrendering to inferior beings. General Seo Ji-won walked into the room completely unarmed. She was a small human woman facing a group of large, heavily armed aliens who had spent their lives training for combat. "Your empire no longer exists," she told them in a calm, quiet voice. "Your fleets are destroyed. Your colonies are liberated. Your military is disbanded. Your people are prisoners. You can die uselessly here in this room, or you can surrender and face proper legal judgment for your crimes." General Krextar raised his weapon and pointed it directly at her. "Never," he screamed. "Vorthons do not surrender to weak species. We will fight until our last breath." What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Seo Ji-won moved faster than the Vorthans could follow. In one smooth motion, she disarmed Krextar and had him face down on the floor with his arms secured behind his back. The other Vorthan officers found themselves surrounded by human soldiers who had entered the room so quietly that no one had noticed them. "You still do not understand," Seo Ji-won said as she helped Krextar back to his feet. "We were never weak. We were choosing to be peaceful. There is a very important difference between those two things." By the end of Day 5, the Vorthan homeworld was completely under human control. Every military installation had been captured. 1 year after the 6-day war ended, the galaxy was completely different. Ambassador Kim Yuna sat in her office on Earth, reading reports from across human space. Trade was flowing smoothly again. Colonies were growing and prospering. Children played safely in parks on worlds where Vorthan soldiers had once marched with weapons and threats, but everyone knew that everything had changed. A delegation from the Centauri Republic was waiting outside her office. They wanted to discuss a new trade agreement, and they had been extremely polite in their written request. They used words like please and thank you many times. They offered much better terms than humans had ever received before the war. Kim Yuna smiled quietly to herself. 1 year ago, these same Centauri diplomats had treated her with barely hidden contempt. They had acted like they were doing humans a favor by allowing them to trade in Centauri space. Now they spoke to her like they were asking for help from someone who could easily destroy them if they were rude or unfair. Send them in, she told her. Assistant. Dr. Park Min-ho had published his book about the war 6 months after it ended. The Human Paradox. A species that wages peace through strength became required reading at every diplomatic school across the galaxy. Students from dozens of species studied his analysis of what had happened and why. In his book, he explained the most important lesson the galaxy had learned about humans during those 6 days. Humans were not peaceful because they were weak or unable to fight. They were peaceful because they understood the true cost of war better than any other species. Humans evolved on a death world, he wrote in the introduction. Every plant and animal on their planet tried to kill them. They learned to be perfect hunters and fighters just to survive each day. Then they looked up at the stars and decided to try being something different instead. Their choice to be peaceful was their greatest victory over their own nature, not a sign of weakness. Captain Li Dong's merchant ships now moved freely through regions of space that had once been very dangerous for human traders. Pirates stayed far away from vessels flying human flags. Aggressive species gave human cargo ships plenty of space when they passed through their territory. The protection of human merchants had become an unwritten law that everyone in the galaxy obeyed. It is amazing how polite everyone has become since the war, his communication officer Yoon Taik observed as they passed through what used to be Vorthon space. Li Dong nodded and smiled. Fear and respect can look very similar from the outside. The important thing is that our people are safe now. Admiral Han Wu had retired from active military duty and became the first director of human galactic security. His new job was not to command battle fleets, but to make sure the galaxy never forgot the lessons learned during the 6-day war. He kept his office very simple. 1 desk, 1 chair, and a wall covered with photographs. 847 photographs to be exact. The pictures showed the faces of every person who had died on mining station Busan 7. Men, women, and children who had been murdered simply because they were human. Never again, he said to each new officer who joined his department. Never again will innocent humans die while diplomats make excuses and file useless complaints. General Seo Ji-won had established something completely new called the Human Peacekeeping Corps. The HPC was not a traditional army designed to conquer territory or destroy enemies. It was a specialized force created to prevent wars before they could start. When disputes arose between different species, HPC mediators would arrive to help find peaceful solutions. They spoke softly and carried only small personal weapons, but everyone in the galaxy knew exactly what humans could do if peaceful solutions failed to work. We always prefer to solve problems with words and negotiation, Seo Ji-won explained to a group of new peacekeepers during their training. But we are fully prepared to use other methods if talking does not produce fair results. Major Beck Sora had become the most famous soldier in the galaxy. Military academies on dozens of worlds required their students to study her textbook on precision warfare tactics. But she was more proud of her other achievement, the Vorthon Reconstruction Project. The worlds that had once been part of the Vorthon Empire were now peaceful democratic societies. People who had lived their entire lives under a cruel military dictatorship were learning how to vote in free elections, how to speak their opinions without fear, and how to live normal lives without violence. This is what real victory looks like, Bexora told her students at the military academy. Not defeated enemies lying in ruins, but free people building better lives for their children. Captain Oh Jinsu continued to command stealth ships for the human fleet, but his mission had completely changed. Instead of hunting enemy vessels, he now protected peaceful merchant ships and provided security escorts for diplomatic missions traveling through dangerous regions of space. His ship, the Inchen's Wrath, had become a symbol of human military power held carefully in check. Everyone knew it was out there somewhere. Everyone knew what weapons it carried and what destruction it could cause. And everyone was grateful that it chose not to use that power unless absolutely necessary. Commander Nam Hyeon had been promoted to admiral and given command of the human deep space fleet. His ships patrolled the empty regions beyond known space, watching for new threats that might arise from unexplored star systems. We cannot prevent every possible conflict in the galaxy, he told his officers during their regular briefings. But we can make sure that anyone who starts an aggressive war understands exactly what the consequences will. Choi's engineer Choi Hana had found a new purpose in helping rebuild everything that had been destroyed during the war. She designed safer space stations, better protected colonies, and improved defense systems for peaceful worlds throughout human space and beyond. But she never forgot why the war had been necessary in the first place. In every structure she designed, she included small memorial plaques with the names and faces of people who had died in Vorthon attacks. She wanted future generations to remember the cost of allowing aggressive species to threaten innocent families. Captain Shin Wook became the military governor, responsible for overseeing the former Vorthon territory. His job was to make sure the transition from military dictatorship to democratic government proceeded smoothly and fairly. He was firm when necessary but always just, and even former enemies had learned to respect his leadership. The Vorthons were not born evil, he explained to a visiting news reporter. They were taught from childhood that strength meant hurting weaker people. We are teaching them that real strength means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Lieutenant Kang Minji continued her information warfare operations, but now her mission was to prevent conflicts instead of winning them. Her broadcast promoted understanding between different species and warned against repeating the mistakes that had led to the 6-Day War. Peace is not simply the absence of fighting, she would say during her regular galaxy-wide programs. True peace is the presence of justice and fairness for everyone. The entire galaxy had settled into a new pattern of behavior. Disputes between species were resolved quickly through negotiation. Aggressive governments found themselves completely isolated and without any support from other worlds. Trade and cooperation flourished under the protection of human peacekeeping forces. But the most important change was something that could not be seen or measured. It existed in the minds of every intelligent being who had witnessed or heard about the 6-Day War. Humans were no longer viewed as weak builders and traders who could be pushed around by stronger species. They were now seen as guardians of galactic peace, gentle by choice but absolutely terrible when forced to fight. The galaxy had learned to value that choice and to avoid doing anything that might change it. On the first anniversary of the war's end, Kim Yuna gave a special speech to the Coalition Council. The same chamber where humans had once been mocked and dismissed was now filled with complete, respectful silence when she spoke. 1 year ago, humanity showed you what we could accomplish when our patience was finally exhausted, she said, looking around at representatives from dozens of different worlds. We did not fight for conquest or glory or territorial expansion. We fought for justice. We fought to protect innocent people. We fought to ensure that what happened to our families would never happen to anyone else in the galaxy. She paused and looked directly at each delegation in turn. Today, I want to remind everyone of something even more important than our military capabilities. We showed you our strength, yes, but we also demonstrated our restraint and mercy. We could have burned entire worlds to ash. We could have enslaved whole populations. We could have ruled through fear and intimidation. Instead, we chose justice over revenge. We chose rebuilding over destruction. We chose cooperation over domination. That choice remains available to us every single day, and every day we choose peace over war, understanding over hatred, construction over destruction. But make no mistake about this. It is a choice we make freely, and all choices can be changed if circumstances require it. The chamber remained completely silent for several minutes after she finished speaking.